Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Munch and Learn on quite an apt day, Independence Day for some. So what a perfect time to be talking about financial independence, financial freedom with our special guest, Shabbar from Lumos Financial, financial advisor. Before I kick in with various questions, Shabbar, do you want to just say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. Good morning. Hope you're all well. Yeah, as James said, my name's Shabbar Kassam. I'm an independent financial advisor, and I run a firm down in Hemel Hempstead, where we mainly look at helping business owners, individuals approaching retirement, get financially organised, help them to invest wisely, and save some tax.
That's always very welcome. I think people always love saving tax. I think one of the things that is quite common, I've worked with Shabbar on a number of occasions. One of the things that is that's quite common to our process, I think it's quite interesting, is that we always take a deep dive into understand what people really want, what success looks like for them, and what they want personally, the kind of lifestyle that they want to live, because we believe it's really vital in terms of driving and motivating you towards your business actions. And I guess, Shabbar, you look at it from a slightly different lens, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, most people on here are probably going to be business owners, so we'll use them as an example. But your business is just a vehicle for you to create wealth. It's an asset, and it's helping you to produce income, tangible value that you might be able to call upon in the future when you exit. So yeah, your business is probably your biggest asset, and you need to use your assets to help you achieve financial freedom. But if you don't know where you're headed, and when I say if you don't know where you're headed, if you don't know what lifestyle you want, you won't be able to know how much is enough. And if you don't know how much is enough, you can't actually plan, because you've got no idea what numbers you need to hit in order to live that lifestyle. So everything's very, very connected, and therefore you have to start with getting to know an individual and what their sort of dreams and goals, and they can change, but you need a roadmap.
So financial freedom was the headliner for today, and I know for most people, obviously their success is completely defined by them and unique to them, but the majority of people include some form of freedom of time to do what they want, and a certain amount of money to facilitate doing stuff with that time they enjoy without having to worry too much about other stuff. Those things are often part of people's success. So I guess today we'll have to talk fairly generally about financial freedom. But before we do, what questions do you ask people? Because it's like, well, you posed a really good question earlier. It's like, well, how much is enough? How do you help people get to the bottom of that question for themselves?
Well, there's a variety of different ways. I mean, again, it depends on how open a client is initially, because some people are quite reserved, some people are not very trusting in the beginning. It's difficult to sort of tease out from them the really important stuff. Most people will turn up and say, I want to save tax, or I want to make more money. I think it's always the why behind that. So why do you want to save more tax? What's important to you about saving tax? And when you ask yourself that question and you have time to reflect, you're not really wanting to save tax, but you want to keep more of your money. Now, why do you want to keep more of your money? Because I don't feel like I've got enough. Okay. So if you had more money, what would you be doing with it? I'd be taking a few more holidays, or I would be helping a local charity, or maybe, taking care of my parents, or whatever it is, buying a new set of golf clubs. It's starting to find out what's the money for. Money's just a tool, it's actually it's invisible. It's digits on a screen. It's actually not real. When you come to think about it, it's It's
It's a
just that we've
concept,
agreed.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's just that we've agreed. Yeah, we've agreed that, you know, these little notes with well, the Queen and the King's head on actually mean that I can transfer that for some goods and services. But it's not really that real. It's, you know, but there's a lot of emotion around money. As you can see, we're already digressing away from the initial subject matter, but essentially finding out the lifestyle that you want, and that's individual for each of us. But then the lifestyle that you want is just going to be a reflection of your values, you know.
Yeah.
And so once you start to know and understand, well, what lifestyle do I want now, and what lifestyle do I want to maintain in the future, then it just becomes a maths exercise. Because then you can say, right, okay, well, you want a lifestyle now, which means that you need £5,000 per month. And you think that, you know, when the kids are grown up and there's no mortgage, etc., you would be happy to sort of, you know, survive. But I mean, actually, you could still thrive on £3,000 a month. Okay. And that would make you happy, because you would list out all of the things that you wanted to do, the activities, the experiences, you know, the helping of kids and families and grandkids or whatever. And you've come to an idea that that lifestyle of £3,000 a month is enough for you. Might not be enough for your neighbor, but it's enough
absolutely.
for you. And then you can start to plan, and this is where you might hire someone like myself, is to then take you through the financial planning exercise of, right, what do I need to do so that I can live my life now at £5,000 per month? But I'm also mindful that at some point in the future, when I stop working, when I don't have the income coming in, I'm going to need some sort of asset or passive income that's going to generate me that £3,000 per month. But factoring in that there is this pesky little thing called inflation, which means £3,000 per month in 20 years' time is not actually £3,000 per month, because obviously inflation means that it's going to cost a lot more. And when we factor that in, that means we've got to make certain decisions to make sure that our money grows, because otherwise we won't have the lifestyle that we want. We're actually going to be a lot poorer. And if you're a lot poorer, you don't have the same freedom, and you don't certainly have the lifestyle that you want.
Right. So they can come to you with all of that information, and you can do the maths and deal with the inflation for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the sort of the financial planning comes in, and building sort of that roadmap to see, well, where are you now? Where are you headed? And what's it looking like? Are you on track? Are you off track? You know, where are the pitfalls and the roadblocks and all of those things, so that you can start taking action now to avoid that sort of scenario where you get to 60 or 65 or even earlier if you want, but you haven't done the planning, so you're not in a position where you can live your ideal lifestyle, and because you then don't have enough. So yeah, now that can, you know, that takes a bit of exploring to find out, because most people haven't really thought about, you know, what the lifestyle is that they want ideally. And sometimes it's good to sort of to dream bigger, because there's no point, you know, playing small. I think you guys as well would encourage people to sort of dream big, because
Absolutely.
what, you know, you've got to see what's possible. You've got, this is, you know, you only live once, and this isn't a rehearsal. So, you know, you could well be gone tomorrow, but, you know, you've got to try and do the best possible for you and your loved ones. And so, yeah, why not try and build the ideal lifestyle? And if you don't get there, then you can have something still pretty decent, because, you know, you started aiming high in the first place.
Okay, so I know, you know, so I've got that clear in my head. Where do we start? You mentioned a number of principles of investment that you have. What action do you start with?
So, I mean, if we're looking sort of steps to financial freedom, I mean, if you think about it, you know, before you start trying to build wealth for your future, which is what we were saying, that you need to build wealth in order to be able to sustain your lifestyle when you stop working. Okay, that's the game that we're playing. We've got human capital at the moment, because we can work, we're fit, we're strong, etc. And we've got this wealth window where we can convert that human capital into assets. Yeah,
I like the concept. You've got a window.
Yeah,
Depending on how old you are, I guess it's quite a short window or a big window.
yeah. So you've got this ability now to sort of, you could use any sort of example. You can start, sowing the seeds for the, and then, reap the rewards later. Whatever. There's so many different analogies, but yeah, we've all got this window, and the months are ticking away because we're not going to be able to work forever. We've got to start converting this sort of human capital, and being able to build up sort of assets that are going to help us later on. So, but before we start doing that, and that's generally is where investing comes in, there's a few basic things that, first of all, you've got to know your numbers. Just like you know your numbers in your business, you've got to know your numbers personally. So what's coming in and what's going out, vitally important, because you can't invest money that you don't have. And so, having an audit of what you're spending is probably the most important thing. And getting in check, what's your lifestyle cost at the moment? And like I said, it's all a balancing act. You live everything for today. You'll have a fantastic life, but then you're going to be suffering later on. And likewise, you don't want to be so prudent and so stingy now that you just don't enjoy life at all for a future that's unknown and uncertain, and you might not even get there. So there's a real balancing act. But definitely knowing your numbers, and there's a range of ways of doing that, and that's probably the hardest thing, because that takes the most discipline, is to be able to sort of curb your spending if you're spending too much, and really be honest with yourself around, like, do I really need that? We're all prone, me included, to sort of the shiny object syndrome. The world is kind of just geared towards taking money out of our pocket rather than putting it in, and so we've got to be mindful of that. I think after you've sort of got an idea of where you are, you then need to make sure that you've got an emergency fund in place, so that if disaster ever happened, and let's say you couldn't work for several months, or you got seriously ill, or whatever it is, that you've got like a little buffer that can sort of help you for sort of 3 to 6 months to get through that initial. If it's something longer term and more serious, there's other solutions, but we need a sort of an emergency fund, because if the boiler breaks down, or the car needs repairing, most people end up having to turn towards like credit cards, or taking out some sort of finance, because they just don't have the ability to absorb those shocks. So having we always say 3 to 6 months of your expenditure tucked away that you don't really touch.
6 months of expenditure. Everyone should have that.
Yeah, and if you're self-employed, you probably need a bit more. Just because you're a little bit more vulnerable, you might not have any benefits from your if you're employed. Then you need to get out of debt, and when I say debt, I mean the crap debt at high interest rates, so the credit cards, and if you've got payday loans or anything like that, because these things are crippling you, because they're just taking money out your pocket, and we want to be putting money back in. So and interest rates are going up, so mortgages as well now becoming more expensive. So I'm not necessarily saying go and sort of pay down your mortgage aggressively. That that is an option for some people, but I'm just talking about the double-digit interest rates. The stuff that's just not getting cleared, because
the credit cards and anything that you've got on silly rates. Yeah,
because it's just compounding, and it's just getting worse and worse. So yeah, you've got to make some real efforts. There's a couple of methods that you can use. I'm probably not going to go into that because I'm conscious of time. But yeah, definitely look at addressing getting out of debt, because it's just like an anchor around you.
Like if anyone's in that situation and needs support, then drop Shabbar a note directly in the community. I'm sure you'll
so then the next thing is what I would call disaster insurance. People, life cover, critical illness, income protection. So making sure that you're building your house on solid foundations rather than on sand, because there's no point investing for your financial future and freedom and all of that wonderful stuff if it takes one little freak incident to just derail you completely. So and as business owners, we're even more susceptible. So having the life cover in place to protect your family so that they're okay if anything happens to you. Also, if you're seriously ill, And if you can't work, where's your income going to come from? And if you're going to be struggling financially, then you need to put something in place. And again, reach out for help if you need that, and we can definitely assist.
So I'm making a note. I'm making a note for myself. I want to make sure that it's a question I probably haven't asked all of my clients. And I'd like to make sure that they've got those things.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the best laid plans will just go to poof, if someone, couldn't work tomorrow. And so why would you make grand plans, and not have, protected the basics? So yeah, something that's missed. And it's not, it can be tax efficient. You can pay it out of the business. It's really, touch wood, we hope things like that never happen, but if they do, we don't want them to scupper our financial future. And then once you've laid those foundations, then you can move on to the exciting thing, which is investing for your future. So investing principles, so there's lots of stuff out there where people will try and promise you, double-digit returns, in the next 60 days, and all of, there's stuff full on, social media has always got, different flavors of the month, etc. I try and get my clients to sort of just ignore the noise and focus on what's always worked. And two assets that have always worked are businesses and bricks. Okay. If we just break those down, businesses and bricks, everyone can understand what businesses and bricks do. Yeah. So let's start with bricks. Bricks, property, really simple. You buy a property, it has a rental income, which means that it's a productive asset. It's producing an income on an ongoing basis. Yes, you might have rental voids, but generally, houses will be occupied, you'll get a rent, and you can increase that rent in line with inflation, generally. So it's inflation proof. And historically, the value of houses has gone up as well. So it's got the components of being what we would call a real asset, because it's productive, it gives off an income, and it's got the potential for capital growth. So property could be a good place to invest money.
You're still advocating that? Because I know there's a lot, mortgage rates are, just to give you a question, mortgage rates are going up.
I'm not talking about specifically
the property have reduced.
It's not, it might not be the right investment at the moment, but I'm just saying traditionally what have been productive assets where you could get a return on your money. Okay, so property historically, and even now, but it's a lot harder now. You were going through one of those periods where property is not very tax efficient. It's difficult unless you're in the know to find a deal, because there are professionals out there that are doing this day in, day out. Me as a lay person who doesn't know a huge amount of property when it comes to investing in the Watford area, for example, or Croxley Green or Tring or wherever it is that people are based. We're outsiders. There are people on the inside that know when a property's a good deal or not a good deal, or they might know someone and they get information before the general market and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's not specifically that at the moment go out and buy property. No, because now interest rates are higher. It's a lot less attractive than it was a decade ago.
But interesting, this is quite a specific one, but probably help a number of people here. Is how about bricks for your business? So if you're paying rent on a building, what would you advise that individual to do?
So again, so that's a slightly different situation, and that's a very good tax efficient way of planning for your future. So we might as well touch on that. So when it comes to your own property, so let's say you're a dentist and you have your dental practice that you operate out of on the ground floor, and then you might have some sort of residential at the top. And I do this for a lot of clients. So Mr. and Mrs. Ltd, run the dental practice, and they're paying rent to a third party to use the premises. Now, if they manage to, so they could buy the dental practice themselves, in the limited company, and then they could just, obviously avoid paying rent now. And then they will get the appreciation in the value of the property. So it's an investment for them. And then at some point in the future, they could, if they stop being a dental practice, they could rent that space out, blah, blah, blah. But the most tax efficient way of doing that is to buy that property through your own pension.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We're sort of opening up we don't have the time, but essentially what you would be doing is, if you've got your pension, and let's say you've got £300,000 in your pension, okay, you could take that pension money and you could use that pension money to buy that dental practice, i.e. the bricks.
Yeah.
And therefore the dental practice is now owned by the pension, which means that the limited company still has to pay rent, because the limited company doesn't own the dental practice. The pension owns the dental practice, but essentially the pension is you and your wife.
Yeah. And
so now what happens is, if you were, thinking that you were paying £2,000 per month, for the use of that dental practice, you're now paying that £2,000 per month into your own pension. So that's money that's going into your own pot for your future. But you also get to obviously claim tax relief on that £2,000 as an expenditure from your business. So it's actually a tax efficient way of getting money out of the business into your own personal environment, i.e. your pension. But more importantly is that property now, which is generating rent, is also going up in value. You're not going to pay tax on the growth of that property. So if that property then, grows from 300,000 to 600,000, you're not going to pay any capital gains when you come to sell that property. Whereas if it wasn't in the pension and you just held it in your sort of limited company name, you would be paying tax when you come to sell it.
Excellent.
So a very tax efficient way of planning for your future through buying the premises that you operate out of, if it's a good deal.
And very quickly, how quickly can you pay into that pension, set it up?
Well, you'd have to have the cash in your pension to begin with. Now, if you haven't got any money in your pension, it's going to take you maybe a while to build money up into your pension, but you can turbocharge that if you've got, the ability to make bigger contributions. Again, that's the sort of the technical side of pensions, what you can and can't do. So yeah, do reach out if that's something that's of interest. But yeah, some people could get, between husband and wife, a couple of £100,000 into pension straight away if they've got the money within the business to make those contributions. So it is possible to do it, fairly quickly. And the tax benefits are fantastic. But again, it's about doing it for the right reason, and that's because it's going to be helping you towards achieve that lifestyle, down the line. Because yeah, it's, the pension's going to provide you with a source of income when you need it.
Yeah,
and that's the driving force. So
thank you. I know we went on off at a bit of a piece. So that's bricks.
Yeah, and so then you've got businesses. So we all run businesses, and we know how businesses work. Essentially, businesses that make goods and services for people to consume. And if you own a share of that business, then what you do receive, if the company is profitable, is you get a slice of that profit, depending on the size of your share. But also you then join in the capital appreciation in the value of that business. And so when it gets sold in the future, then you'd potentially get a slice of that sale. So that's generally how, owning shares in businesses work. And we know that historically, the great businesses of the world, so that, the hundreds and thousands of businesses globally, some of them will be really, really profitable. The Apples, the Googles, the Amazons, etc. But, Jimmy's fish and chip shop down the road, probably, doesn't make as much money, or might even go bust, or if things become, bad. And what we do is we say, well, actually, we know that these great companies of the world, so, you've got the top businesses run by the top CEOs with the best talent globally, make really, really good money. Okay. And we want to take a share of that. So what we do is we say, right, well, we're going to invest through a vehicle, which is typically a fund, which would hold thousands of these global companies that are listed on public stock markets. And what we then find is that if we hold that basket or that group of companies for decades, we get very handsome returns. Okay, and because we own shares in those companies, very, very small shares, you know, absolutely minuscule amounts in each of these companies, but we get a slice of the profits that they make, and we share in the capital appreciation, which means that the value of our pot goes up, and then we can use that money how we want, and it's totally hands off. Literally, you don't need to do a thing. You deposit your money, you turn your chair to the side, and you just let the market take care of the rest. There's no involvement whatsoever, apart from the fact that you need to be in control of your emotions, because because the great companies of the world experience something which people often misquote as risk, and it's not actually risk, it's what we call volatility, which means they're up and down. So when people say they've lost money, or they've lost out in the stock market, what they actually mean is that they bought at this point and they sold at this point, but had they not sold and panicked and reacted, they could have actually sold back up here. Because if we look back at the global stock market, it's been on an upward trend. It's a permanent upward trend, but with ups and downs along the way.
Absolutely.
And that's a feature of investing, that there are ups and downs, because why should you be getting handsome returns over decades, if you're not prepared to experience some discomfort? Otherwise, you'd just be putting your money, under the mattress or in a bank account and getting a couple of percent. It wouldn't make sense for something to be delivering 8 or 9%.
Absolutely, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, higher risk, higher return generally.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So people misunderstand this idea of risk, and it's actually just think of it as ups and downs. And there's always going to be ups and downs. But the thing is that the global stock market has always been the best performing asset over decades. And so we need to use that to our advantage to build wealth for us to then be able to have the lifestyle that we want later on. Because the stock market has the ability to beat inflation. And that's our enemy. The real risk to any individual is the fact that they're going to run out of money later on in life, and that's because the cost of their lifestyle will go up aggressively, and their value of their pots or their investments will not match that, and therefore they're having to draw out more and more and more as the cost of living gets higher and higher and higher, and then they end up running out of money or having to sacrifice lifestyle. And so that's why investing is so important, is that we've got the ability to sort of at least match, if not beat, inflation and create wealth.
So if I'm getting this right, just to help sum up, is almost having that emergency fund with whatever it is, 3 to 6 months or more if you're self-employed. That's the kind of liquid stuff. And then beyond that, once you've paid off debts and you've got your right insurances in place, then the investments you're making, you should be able to afford your current lifestyle and leave them in there for a while to be able to surf that trend.
Well, exactly, yeah. So you're investing for decades, and not reacting or overreacting to the media and the noise and all of the nonsense that's out there, because there's always Armageddon. We're going through it at the moment. We went through it during COVID. We went through it during the great financial crisis. We went through it during the dot-com bubble. We went through it when high inflation in the 70s, or high interest rate in the 80s. There's always, we had world wars, we've had great depressions, we've had, you name it, we've gone through it, and we've come through okay, and we've moved on. And so the biggest hurdle for an investor is staying disciplined and not reacting, because that's the number one I would say that's the number one trait that sabotages your ability to create wealth, is the fact that, and it's human nature, to go against, which is, oh, this thing is going down, I need to bail out. Right, that's just human nature. That's human nature.
Is that the fifth step, or?
So the fifth step is just investing wisely, and that comes under, you know, using your ISAs and your pensions, and doing things like you just mentioned with, you know, buying commercial property, you know, using your pension, etc. I mean, that is a beefy topic all in itself. You know, how to invest, but it can be very simple, as you know, looking at buying a basket of the great companies of the world, which you can do for very cheaply. And if you look historically, you know, over the last 100 years, the average return on, you know, the global stock market has been sort of 8-9% annually. And so, you know, for anyone, that's going to be enough returns to give them a very comfortable retirement if they stayed invested.
If they stayed investment. So that's so there's a couple of disciplines here, aren't there?
Yeah.
One is just not overspending based on the lifestyle you want to leave, and two is actually taking some of your advice and sticking to your guns.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, probably a hard one. Thank you. I think we're at time now, Shabbar. So the five steps. Do you want to just sum them up in 10 seconds for us?
Yeah. So know your numbers. So make sure you've got a budget spending plan in place. Have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months. Start getting out of bad debt, I would call it. Protect yourself against nasty surprises. So make sure you've got the right insurances in place, and then begin your journey to investing wisely. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
All right.
One kind of question here. It wasn't asked directly as a question, but okay. I just came across something the other day that they didn't like credit at all. And I'm not talking about the stupid credit card rates that you wanted to clear, but it's stuff like a mortgage and paying off a mortgage when there's potentially other better things you could do. So what advice would you give people who just kind of mentally don't like credit facilities?
I mean, that's fine. I mean, we've all got a money script or a money story, and for some people it might have been from childhood, that they've seen close family get into a lot of debt and be crippled by, you know, interest payments and mortgages, etc. And maybe they've decided that it's not for them, you know, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. There's always a rational argument and an emotional argument for any financial decision.
Absolutely. For any decision.
Yeah. So yeah, especially with money. And so I think that it's important just to recognize, and we have these conversations with clients all the time around, okay, well, financially, this might be the right thing to do, but emotionally, it's not feeling like the right thing to do. So let's unpack it, let's explore it and see, you know, where we get to. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be able to sleep at night. That's the most important thing. So paying off debt is sometimes a more of an emotional,
absolutely, yeah,
emotional issue. So yeah, it's difficult to say, but yeah, maths would dictate, you know, if you're paying 4%, but you know you can get 8% return, then you'd go and get the 8% return, because that's better than paying off the 4%, you know, interest rate. But it doesn't always work like that.
No, get it. Thank you very much indeed for joining and sharing your wisdom today. I mean, Shabbar is an active part and player within the No Limits community, so you can reach out to him in the community at any time. Direct message him if you've got a personal point that you want to pick up on. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, Shabbar.
Cheers, James. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Shabbar. Thank you, James.